7:14 a.m., coastal Maine. The kitchen felt colder than it should have. "You're done here." James didn't raise his voice when he said it. He didn't shout, didn't slam anything onto the counter, didn't even sound angry. He simply stood across the kitchen island, hands resting flat on the worn wood I had scrubbed every morning for years, and delivered the words as if they were a conclusion he had reached long before I walked into the room. Behind me, the kettle clicked off. The sound was sharp in the sudden quiet. Steam rose briefly, then disappeared. For a moment I couldn't answer. Pale morning light filtered through the window, catching dust in the air and settling gently over the table where I had signed school forms, planned birthdays, and balanced bills late into the night. My slippers felt thin against the cold tile. "You're done here." I repeated it silently, testing the sentence, turning it over in my mind, trying to understand how it could possibly belong in this house. My house. "I've taken care of everything," James continued. "You don't need to worry anymore. This is for the best." He spoke the way people do when they believe the decision is already final, when they mistake politeness for permission. I noticed he didn't look at my face. His eyes drifted past me toward the back door. I rested my hand on the counter to steady myself. The surface was cool, familiar, solid. "Don't react," I told myself. "Just listen." That instinct to stay composed, to avoid making a scene, had been carved into me over a lifetime. Silence had always felt safer than saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. "Done with what?" I asked quietly. My own voice surprised me. It didn't tremble. "With all this," he said, gesturing vaguely around the kitchen. "The house, the responsibilities. It's time you let me handle things." The refrigerator hummed. A gull cried somewhere outside. Ordinary sounds continued, indifferent to the moment unfolding between us. I searched his face for the boy I had raised, the one who used to sit at this table doing homework, chewing his pencil, asking questions he never waited to hear answered. But what I saw instead was resolve, polished, certain. I nodded once, slowly, more to myself than to him. Inside, questions pressed forward. When did this start? What has he already decided? What don't I know yet? But I didn't ask them, not yet. Because beneath the shock, beneath the hurt, a colder awareness was forming. If he's this confident, I realized, it's because he thinks I won't push back. I turned back to the kettle and poured the water. My hands were steady, my back was straight. James shifted slightly, uncertain now, as if he sensed the silence had changed. And in that quiet, I understood something that hadn't been clear a moment before. This conversation wasn't the beginning of what was happening to me. It was the aftermath. 7:26 a.m., coastal Maine. The house felt unfamiliar, though nothing had moved. The kitchen looked exactly the same after James stepped out. The same pale curtains lifted slightly with the sea air. The same worn chair sat pushed halfway under the table. The same clock ticked steadily above the sink. And yet, the room no longer felt like it belonged to me. It was as if an invisible line had been drawn across the floor, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. I sat down slowly. My knees were stiff. The chair creaked beneath me. The sound echoed louder than usual. "You're done here." His words repeated themselves, not angrily, not loudly, but with the confidence of someone who believes the future has already been settled. My hands rested in my lap, folded neatly, a habit from years of waiting patiently through conversations that mattered more to other people than to me. Outside, the morning was bright but cold. The ocean wind carried the smell of salt and damp wood through the cracked window. Gulls cried near the shore, sharp, insistent. I had lived in this house long enough to know every sound it made, every way the light moved through it as the day progressed. That familiarity had always been comforting. Now, it felt like evidence, proof of how much I stood to lose. Don't jump to conclusions, I told myself. You don't have all the information yet. That voice, measured, cautious, had guided me through decades of hardship. It reminded me to pause before reacting, to gather facts before speaking. Still, unease settled heavily in my chest. James hadn't asked me anything. He hadn't explained. He had announced. I looked around the room again, slower this time. The small crack in the tile near the stove, the faint stain on the table from a pot that once boiled over. Marks of living, not neglect, of staying. How does someone decide you're finished with your own life? There was a knock at the door, light, tentative. My heart lifted briefly, then settled again as I realized it was only the wind pushing the screen against its frame. I crossed the room and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My face looked calm, almost composed, but my eyes were alert now. Something has already been set in motion, I realized, and I was the last to be told. Whatever James thought he had finished, I knew one thing with certainty. I was only beginning to understand what he had done. 8:02 a.m., coastal Maine. Memory has a way of opening quietly. I hadn't planned to think about the past that morning, but the house insisted. As I moved through it, the years followed me, softly, persistently, like footsteps I couldn't quite place. I brushed my fingers along the back of the dining chair and remembered James at 6 years old, swinging his legs beneath the table, asking questions he never waited to hear answered. "Slow down," I used to tell him. "Listen first." I smiled faintly at the thought, then felt the weight of it settle. 30 years earlier, life hadn't been generous. It had been practical. After James's father passed, the house grew colder in ways the furnace couldn't fix. I worked longer hours, learned how to stretch meals, how to make decisions that wouldn't be noticed until years later, decisions that looked like nothing at the time but became everything. I paid this house off slowly, patiently, one payment at a time. Late nights at the kitchen counter, bills spread out, the only sound the clock and my own breathing. There were months I chose the practical over the pleasant without complaint. Shoes instead of curtains, groceries instead of a coat. This is temporary, I would tell myself. This is how you protect the future. James grew while I did that. Taller, louder, more certain. I encouraged his confidence, even when it edged into impatience. I wanted him to move freely in a world that had always demanded restraint from me. Looking back now, I saw the signs, small ones. His habit of finishing my sentences, taking over conversations, deciding before asking. When he started helping with paperwork years later, I was grateful. I told myself it was practical, efficient. That's what family does. I never imagined that help could turn into assumption. Standing alone in the kitchen now, clarity replaced regret. Everything I had built had been deliberate. Nothing about my life was accidental. and somewhere along the way my quiet had been mistaken for consent. 8:41 a.m., coastal Maine. The warning signs were never loud. James hadn't changed overnight. That was the unsettling part. Confidence had quietly turned into certainty, helpfulness into direction, suggestions into decisions made without asking. "I'll handle that for you, Mom," he'd say, already reaching for the papers. He spoke quickly, efficiently, always sounding as though time itself were something I was using improperly. "It's easier this way." At the time, the words sounded kind. Now, they echoed differently. He began calling the house the property, spoke about my accounts in the future tense. Each time I felt that faint tightening in my stomach, I dismissed it. He means well. He's my son. Love, I realized too late, can soften your attention. James hadn't forced anything. He hadn't needed to. He had relied on my reluctance to challenge him. If he believes this is already decided, I thought, he won't be expecting resistance. And that, I understood, was where my silence would begin to change. 9:18 a.m., coastal Maine. The first betrayal arrived quietly. I discovered it in the mail, an envelope from a legal office I didn't recognize. Inside, documents written in calm, authoritative language. Authorization, transfer, temporary control. My name appeared in the signature block, typed, not written. That's not my handwriting. James froze when he saw it in my hands. "Oh," he said, "you found that?" "Found." "You signed for me?" I asked. He sighed. "Mom, it's easier this way." Easier. For him. I folded the paper carefully and placed it on the table. This wasn't help. It was the first line he crossed. 10:06 a.m., coastal Maine. The second betrayal felt deliberate. James didn't bring the document up again that morning. He moved through the house as if nothing had shifted, opening drawers, answering his phone, speaking in a tone that assumed continuity. I watched him quietly from the kitchen doorway, noticing how natural it looked, how practiced, how comfortable he was occupying space that had always been mine. This is what certainty looks like, I thought. Not loud, just assumed. I discovered the second betrayal when I tried to access my own accounts. It began with a password rejection. Simple, impersonal. I frowned, certain I had typed it correctly, and tried again. The same message appeared. I tried a third time. Slower now, deliberate. Still nothing. When I finally reached customer service, the woman on the other end spoke politely, carefully, the way people do when they are already choosing their words. "There's been a recent update on your account permissions," she said. "Your son is listed as the primary contact." Primary. The word landed heavily. I thanked her and ended the call before she could explain further. My hands rested on the table, palms flat. They were steady. He didn't just prepare paperwork, I realized. He acted. James didn't deny it when I asked him. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, as if this were an overdue conversation. "It was necessary," he said. "Things move faster when there's one decision maker." His tone was patient, almost instructional. "You don't need the stress anymore." Stress. The word cut deeper than anger would have. You decided that for me? I asked. He hesitated, just long enough, then nodded. Someone had to. That was the moment something hardened inside me. Not rage, not despair, clarity. This isn't concern. This is replacement. I turned away without another word and walked into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. The quiet there felt protective. Don't react yet, I told myself. Understand first. From the other side of the door, I heard him moving again, confident the conversation had ended in his favor. He was wrong. The second betrayal wasn't just about access. It was about intent. And intent, once revealed, changes everything. 11:02 a.m., coastal Maine. The third betrayal came disguised as kindness. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, hands folded, letting my thoughts settle into order, when I heard James's voice downstairs. Low, friendly, confident. He was on the phone. At first, I couldn't make out every word. Then I heard my name, followed by the word doctor. I stood slowly and moved toward the top of the stairs, careful not to let the old steps creak. From there, his voice carried clearly. Yes, he said, I'm handling things now. She's been a bit confused lately. Confused. The word tightened something deep in my chest. I just want to make sure everything's in place, he continued, his tone reassuring to someone who wasn't me. When he ended the call, I didn't go back to the bedroom. I walked down the stairs, one hand resting lightly on the railing, each step deliberate. He looked up when he saw me. Surprise flickered briefly across his face, then smoothed into concern, carefully arranged. I scheduled an appointment for you, he said quickly. Just to check in. Nothing serious. What kind of appointment? I asked. He hesitated. A cognitive evaluation, he replied. Given your age, it's sensible. There it was. Not paperwork, not access, my credibility. 12:09 p.m., coastal Maine. Determination doesn't announce itself. It settles. I didn't argue with James after that, not because I agreed, but because I understood something essential had shifted. Words would only give him something to manage, something to reframe. Silence, this time, would give me space. I poured myself a glass of water. The tap hissed softly, steady, familiar. My reflection in the window looked calm, almost composed. Good, I thought. Let him believe nothing has changed. James hovered nearby, his shoulders easing as if the danger had passed. We'll get everything sorted out, he said gently. You don't need to worry. His words floated past me without landing. I moved through the house slowly, deliberately. The file cabinet, the desk drawer, the small metal box beneath the bed. I gathered nothing yet. I simply took note. In the bedroom, I opened my old leather notebook, the one I'd kept since long before James learned to write. Its pages were worn. The ink faded in places, but the order remained. Dates, notes, patterns. I added a new entry at the back. Today, James assumed authority. No consent given. My hand didn't shake. James left shortly after, confident everything was contained. I watched his car disappear down the drive. Only then did I breathe fully. This isn't a reaction, I realized. It's preparation. 1:03 p.m., coastal Maine. Preparation has a rhythm of its own. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of paper and coffee-neutral scents that made the world feel steady again. I sat across from his desk, coat folded neatly, bag at my feet. When I opened the leather notebook, the soft crack of its spine sounded louder than it should have. This is why I kept you, I thought. I spoke slowly, in order. What James had said, what he had done, what had changed without my consent. Dates first, then documents, then the call I overheard. My lawyer didn't interrupt. When I slid the forged signature across the desk, he didn't sigh. He didn't frown. "You didn't sign this," he said. "No," I replied. The facts carried themselves. We requested records, account logs, authorization histories, timestamps. The language was precise, unemotional. Dispute, revocation, immediate review. "No conversations," my lawyer said. "From here on, everything goes through me." My phone vibrated. James. I let it ring. Preparation doesn't look like confrontation, I thought. It looks like patience, documented. 4:18 p.m., coastal Maine. The moment the ground shifted. The call came without warning. They moved faster than expected, my lawyer said. The records came back. I sat down slowly. "This shows a pattern," he continued. "Your son positioned himself as sole decision-maker." The room felt suddenly smaller. Not overstepping, erasure. There would be a formal meeting, recorded. James had been notified. Explain. That night, I listened to James's voicemail once. "You're embarrassing yourself," he said. "We can handle this privately." I deleted it. Tomorrow I would sit across from my son in a room where words would be weighed. He had asked me to step aside. Instead, I was about to step forward. 9:12 a.m., Portland, Maine. The truth enters the room. The conference room smelled faintly of old paper and fresh coffee, a strange mixture of history and urgency. Tall windows let in pale winter light, honest and unflinching. I arrived early, not out of fear, but habit. For most of my life, I had learned to listen before speaking. 11:26 a.m., Portland, Maine. Some truths are spoken in front of witnesses. The room was fuller this time. 2 additional attorneys, a firm representative, pens resting ready. This was no longer a family misunderstanding. This was record. "I trusted my son," I said. "I was told I was confused," I continued. I placed the leather notebook on the table. "These are my records," I said. "They aren't opinions, they're facts." Intent, the attorney said calmly, does not override consent. That sentence ended everything. 2:03 p.m., Portland, Maine. Consequences arrive quietly. Oversight reassigned. Authority restored. Further review underway. Justice didn't disrupt life. It corrected it. 6:18 p.m., Portland, Maine. Healing doesn't rush in. It settles. I stirred soup on the stove. Steam fogged my glasses. I laughed softly as I wiped them clean. I'm still here, I thought. 7:41 a.m., Portland, Maine. Some mornings feel earned. Age does not make you invisible. Calm does not make you weak. And silence, when chosen carefully, can be the strongest voice in the room. I turned off the light and stepped into the day, carrying nothing but myself. And that was enough.